Imagine a farm. Just picture it in your mind. It's England, maybe 100 years ago. And it's raining, it's muddy. The animals there, they aren't just animals, they are the workforce. They're tired, they're cold, and they are angry. They work from sunrise to sunset for a master who, well, he drinks too much and feeds them too little.
It's a bleak picture.
It is.
Yeah.
Eventually, they're sold or killed.
Yeah.
It's a scene of just absolute misery. And then the spark. One night, they decide they've had enough. They kick the farmer out. They slam the gate shut. And suddenly, the farm belongs to them.
Freedom.
Exactly. No humans allowed. Just animals working together for freedom. It sounds like a paradise, doesn't it? Utopia. But what happens when the pigs realize that being equal isn't enough? What happens when they decide they want to be the new masters? What happens when equality starts to look a lot like a dictatorship?
It's a terrifying question, and as we'll see, it's the central question of the story we're covering today.
Welcome to Hello English. I'm your host, and today we are doing something a little bit special. We aren't just reviewing a book. We are, I think, dissecting a manual on power. We're looking at George Orwell's Animal Farm.
It's a pleasure to be here. And you're right to call it a manual. I mean, this isn't just a story about talking pigs. It is arguably the most important book in the English language for understanding how language can be weaponized.
Wow, that's a big claim. But I think by the end of this hour, you, our listeners, will probably agree with that. We have a three-part mission today. First, we're going to unpack the story of Animal Farm. Not the academic version, but the real gritty narrative so you understand it clearly.
In simple English.
In simple English. Second, we're going to use this book to upgrade your English. We're talking about the specific vocabulary of politics, of power, of leadership.
And the third part.
Third, and this is maybe the most important part, we want to build your critical thinking skills. We want to show you how the tricks the pigs use in this book are the exact same tricks used by politicians, by advertisers, even bad bosses in the real world today.
So by the end of this deep dive, you won't just know a classic book. You'll hopefully know how to spot a lie when someone tells it to you.
Precisely. We're drawing from the book itself, of course, but also from historical context about the Russian Revolution and some really excellent guides on learning English through literature. Now, I have to admit, when I first heard the title Animal Farm years ago, I thought it was going to be a cute story.
A lot of people do.
Yeah, like maybe a cow and a chicken going on an adventure. But this is not a children's book, is it?
Not at all, no. In fact, George Orwell originally subtitled it a fairy story, but he meant that, very ironically, it's a fairy story for adults. It's dark, it's political, and ultimately it is a tragedy.
Okay, let's unpack this. You mentioned it's a political story. There is a specific word used to describe this kind of book, right? A literary term.
Yes, the word is allegory.
Allegory. Can we define that simply for everyone listening?
Sure. An allegory is basically a story with a hidden meaning. Think of it like a mask. On the surface, the story is about its characters, in this case, animals on a farm. A pig is just a pig. A horse is just a horse.
Right.
But underneath that mask, those characters represent real people and real historical events.
So when we see a pig in the book, it's not just a pig. It's a stand-in for a real person from history.
Precisely. So on the surface, Animal Farm is about animals taking over a farm in England. But underneath, it's the story of the Russian Revolution of 1917. It describes how the people of Russia overthrew their king, the Tsar, and tried to create a communist society, and how that dream just went terribly wrong.
That sounds heavy. I mean, do our listeners need to be experts in Russian history to understand the book?
And that's the beauty of Orwell's writing. The answer is no, absolutely not. While knowing the history definitely helps you appreciate the little details, the story stands completely on its own. It's a universal lesson about power. You don't need to know who Stalin was to understand that a bully is taking your lunch money.
That's a great way to put it. It's a universal template for corruption. Okay, let's jump into the plot. It all starts with a dream, doesn't it?
It does. It starts with a character named Old Major. He's a prize boar, a very old, very respected pig, and he gathers everyone in the big barn for a secret meeting.
He gives this huge, inspiring speech. He talks about a world without humans.
Right. He plants the seed of the idea. He tells them that their lives are miserable, short, and full of labor, all because of human beings. He says man is the only creature that consumes without producing.
That's a powerful line. I mean, humans don't lay eggs, they don't give milk, they can't pull a plow, they just take.
Exactly. And Old Major introduces two key concepts here that are just perfect for our vocabulary list: rebel and revolution.
Oh, good ones. Let's look at those. To rebel. That means to fight back against someone who's controlling you, right?
Yes. If your boss tells you to work on the weekend and you say, no, I'm not doing it, you're rebelling. If a government passes a law you hate and you go out to protest in the street, you are rebelling.
And a revolution is when that rebellion goes all the way and leads to a complete change in the system.
Correct. It's when the old system is completely destroyed and a new one takes its place.
I want to pause on the pronunciation there because that's a long word. Revolution.
It is 4 syllables, revolution. And the stress, the strong part of the word, is on the L-U, revolution.
Revolution. Okay, got it. So Old Major talks about this revolution. He even teaches them a song, Beasts of England, but he dies before it actually happens.
He does. But the idea doesn't die. The animals are hungry. The farmer, Mr. Jones, is a drunkard. He goes on a drinking binge and forgets to feed them for days. And that is the spark.
It usually is, isn't it? I mean, big revolutions don't start because of philosophy. They start because people, or in this case, animals, are hungry.
Exactly. A cow breaks down the door to the food shed. All the animals rush in. Jones wakes up. He comes out with his whip. And suddenly, they fight back.
And they win. They actually chase the humans off the farm. It happens so fast, it's almost chaotic.
It is. And here's a quick grammar point that often trips people up when they talk about this scene. You might hear a learner say, the animals was tired of the farmer.
The animals was tired.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds a little off to my ear.
It is. It's a really common subject-verb agreement error. I hear this a lot because in the student's mind, the animals feels like one big group, a single unit. But grammatically, animals is plural. There's more than one. So we have to use the plural verb were. The animals were tired. The animals were angry.
Got it. Plural noun, plural verb. The animals were ready for a change. So Jones is gone. The farm belongs to them. They rename it Animal Farm. This is the moment of hope. This is the high point. They even write rules on the wall, don't they?
Yes, the 7 commandments. They get a ladder and some paint, and they write them in huge white letters on the side of the big barn. These are the laws of their new society.
And the most important one, the one that sums up everything, is the last one. Number 7, all animals are equal.
Equality. That's such a powerful and complicated word.
Let's dive into that word, equality.
Well, it's the core value of their revolution, isn't it? Equality means that everyone has the same rights, the same status, the same opportunities. In a group project at school, equality means everyone does the same amount of work and gets the same grade.
Which, let's be honest, rarely happens in group projects.
Chuckles, exactly. And as we will see, it rarely happens on Animal Farm either. But at the beginning, everyone is so happy. They even have a slogan. The sheep, in particular, love to chant it.
Oh, I know this one. 4 legs good, 2 legs bad.
Simple, catchy, unforgettable.
It is. 4 legs good because animals have 4 legs. 2 legs bad because humans have 2 legs. It's so straightforward.
Right. But this brings up a really important critical thinking point. Why do the pigs simplify the 7 complex, nuanced commandments into a silly little slogan like that?
Well, it's easy to remember, I guess. Not all the animals can read the big words.
It is easy to remember, but it also stops them from thinking. It oversimplifies a very complex situation. If you are just chanting 2 legs bad, you aren't thinking about why humans are bad or if all of them are bad. I mean, what about birds? They have 2 legs.
The birds actually complain about that in the book.
Yeah, do. And the pigs just fast talk their way out of it. Snowball says, a bird's wing, comrades, is an organ of propulsion and not of manipulation. It should therefore be regarded as a leg.
It's complete nonsense.
It's total nonsense. But it sounds smart and it shuts down the debate. Slogans are designed to stop thinking, not to encourage it.
That's so interesting. We see that in real life all the time, don't we? Short, catchy slogans in politics or advertising.
Absolutely. Just do it. Make America great again. Change. Slogans are incredibly powerful because they bypass our critical thinking. They go straight to our emotions.
So on the surface, everything looks great at Animal Farm.
On the surface. That is a great English expression. We use that to describe how things look at first glance, usually implying that something different, something darker is happening underneath.
Right.
So on the surface, the farm is successful, the harvest is the biggest they've ever had. But underneath, the pigs are already taking the extra milk and apples for themselves.
The pigs. We need to talk about the characters because this is where the story really gets interesting. It's not just a mass of animals. There are very specific personalities. The society divides very, very quickly. You have the leaders, and you have the workers.
Correct. The pigs immediately step up as the brain workers. They don't actually do any physical labor. They claim they are the only ones smart enough to organize and manage the farm.
And within the pigs, there's a power struggle. Let's talk about the big boss, Napoleon.
Napoleon. He's a large, rather fierce-looking Berkshire boar. The book says he's not much of a talker, but with a reputation for getting his own way.
And in the allegory, he represents Joseph Stalin, the Soviet dictator.
Yes. Napoleon isn't the smartest pig, and he definitely isn't the best speaker. But he is cunning, he is ruthless, and he is brutal. He cares about one thing and one thing only: control. He understands that violence ultimately speaks louder than words.
And then you have his rival, Snowball.
Snowball is completely different. He's described as vivacious, quick in speech, more inventive. He represents Leon Trotsky. Snowball actually wants to improve the farm for everyone. He has all these grand ideas, like building a windmill to generate electricity.
He wants to educate the other animals, right? He organizes all these committees, the egg production committee, reading and writing classes.
Exactly. Snowball represents the intellectual, idealistic side of the revolution, the idea that we can use science and education and cooperation to make life better for everyone. But Napoleon doesn't like him at all. Napoleon sees him as a direct threat to his own power.
And then there's the third main pig, the one who talks the most, Squealer.
Squealer is a fascinating character. He's a small, fat porker with very round cheeks and twinkling eyes, and he is a brilliant talker. The book says he has a way of skipping from side to side and whisking his tail, which was somehow very persuasive. The other animals said of Squealer that he could turn black into white.
He represents propaganda.
Yes. And we have to define that word because it is absolutely crucial for this book and for modern life. Propaganda.
Propaganda. That's information, but it's especially biased or misleading information that's used to promote a particular political cause or a point of view.
That's a perfect definition. Squealer is the spin doctor. He's the minister of information. But he's more than just a liar. He is a master of gaslighting.
Gaslighting. Can you explain that?
Gaslighting is a form of psychological manipulation where you make someone question their own reality, their own memory. So, when the pigs steal the milk and apples, the other animals are upset. But Squealer explains it away. He says, "Comrades, you do not imagine, I hope, that we pigs are doing this in a spirit of selfishness and privilege.
Of course not.
Many of us actually dislike milk and apples. I dislike them myself. Our sole object in taking these things is to preserve our health." He says that pigs are brain workers and the whole management of the farm depends on them.
And he says science has proven that milk and apples are essential for a pig's brain.
It's for your sake that we drink that milk and eat those apples. And then he brings out the ultimate threat. He always does. He says, "Surely there is no one among you who wants to see Jones back."
Of course they don't. That's their biggest fear.
That is his ace in the hole. He uses fear. He connects a small, unfair thing like stolen milk to an existential threat, the return of the slave master. It's a brilliant and truly evil rhetorical trick.
So we have the leaders, the pigs. Now let's talk about the workers. My favorite character, and I think everyone's favorite, really, is Boxer.
Boxer the cart horse. He is an enormous beast nearly 18 hands high and as strong as any two ordinary horses put together. He's universally respected for his steadiness of character and tremendous powers of work. But sadly, he is not very intelligent.
He is the very definition of loyalty.
Loyalty, being faithful to a person, a country, or a cause. Boxer has two personal mottos that guide his entire life. The first one is, "I will work harder."
Which is just heartbreaking because he already works harder than anyone else. He wakes up half an hour earlier than everyone else to do extra volunteer labor. He's the one who really builds the farm.
And his second motto, which he adopts a bit later, is, "Napoleon is always right."
Oh, Boxer. That kind of trust. Is it a good thing? Feels like his greatest strength and his greatest weakness at the same time.
That is the tragedy of Boxer. Trust is generally a virtue. We want to be able to trust our leaders, our friends. But blind trust. Trust without any questioning is incredibly dangerous. Boxer trusts Napoleon completely, and that trust is eventually weaponized against him in the most brutal way imaginable.
It makes you think, doesn't it? Have you ever trusted a leader, maybe a boss, a politician, or even just a friend, and later felt really disappointed or betrayed?
It's a painful lesson to learn. Boxer represents the working class, the common person who believed in the revolution with all their hearts, who built the country with their sweat and their labor, only to be betrayed by the very leaders they put their faith in.
There are other key animals, too. There's Benjamin.
Benjamin the donkey. He is the oldest animal on the farm and the worst tempered. He rarely talks, and when he does, it's usually to make some cynical remark.
He's smart, though. He can read as well as any of the pigs, can't he?
He can, but he refuses to get involved. He has this saying, "Donkeys live a long time. None of you has ever seen a dead donkey." His philosophy is that regimes come and go, revolutions happen, flags change, but life will always be full of hardship. Suffering is constant.
So he represents the skeptics, the intellectuals who are smart enough to see what is happening, but too cynical or apathetic to try and stop it.
Exactly. He sees the lies, but he thinks there's no point in fighting back because things will never get better anyway.
And then briefly, there's Molly.
Ah, Molly. The pretty, foolish white mare. She loves eating sugar lumps and wearing ribbons in her mane. She doesn't care about equality or freedom. She cares about luxury and comfort.
She's the one who asks, will there still be sugar after the rebellion?
That's her only question. And she eventually can't handle the new, hard life. She runs away from the farm to go back to serving humans because they give her sugar and pat her nose and let her wear ribbons. She represents the bourgeoisie, perhaps. Those who preferred the old system because it was more comfortable for them personally.
So we have our cast of characters. The stage is set. The rebellion has happened. Now we move into the next phase of the book, the corruption of power.
Yes. This is the middle of the book, where the dream really starts to curdle and turn into a nightmare. We see a clear shift from hope to control and finally to outright corruption.
Corruption. Let's practice that word stress again. It's on the second syllable, right?
Yeah.
Corruption.
Correct. Corruption. And corruption is simply dishonest or fraudulent conduct by those in power. It's when you use your position to enrich yourself instead of serving the people you're supposed to be leading.
We see this corruption happening slowly, step by step, don't we? It starts with the pigs moving into the farmhouse.
Which was strictly forbidden. One of the first resolutions they passed was that the farmhouse should be preserved as a museum. A reminder of their oppression. No animal must ever live there. But suddenly, the pigs are living there. They're eating in the kitchen, using the drawing room, and even sleeping in the beds.
But wait, wasn't there a commandment? I'm sure of it. No animal shall sleep in a bed.
But this is Squealer's genius at work. The animals are troubled by this. Clover, the horse, is sure she remembers that rule. She asks Muriel, the goat, to read the commandment on the barn wall for her.
And what does it say?
It now reads, "No animal shall sleep in a bed with sheets."
With sheets? That's so sneaky. He added 2 words.
It's a brilliant and terrifying linguistic trick. By adding a small condition, a prepositional phrase, they completely change the entire meaning of the law. Squealer then comes along and says, "You didn't think we were sleeping in sheets, did you? A pile of straw is a bed, technically." The rule was against sheets, which are a human invention.
This is such a great language lesson for real life. Adding small words or clauses can completely change the legal meaning of a sentence. It's the fine print.
Absolutely. It happens in contracts and terms of service all the time. You are entitled to a full refund versus you are entitled to a full refund if the product is returned in its original packaging within 3 days. Those extra words make all the difference.
And the animals are confused, but they accept it. Because they can't remember the original rule perfectly, and Squealer is so convincing.
Exactly. Propaganda works best on people who have short memories or lack education. This is why Snowball wanted to educate them, and why Napoleon was only interested in educating the young puppies, whom he could control.
Speaking of Snowball, there's this huge conflict that develops over the windmill. Snowball wants to build it to make life easier. Electricity for light and heat in the stalls, power for machines.
He's the innovator. The visionary.
Napoleon hates the idea. He argues it'll take too much time and they'll starve to death. At one point, he literally pees on Snowball's detailed plans.
He does. It's a very clear, very crude sign of his contempt. But here is that useful expression we can use. At first, but later. At first, Napoleon opposes the windmill with everything he's got. But later, after he gets rid of Snowball, he claims the windmill was his idea all along.
Let's talk about how he gets rid of Snowball. This is maybe the scariest moment in the book so far.
It is the turning point. It's the moment the farm officially becomes a dictatorship. During a big debate about the windmill, just as Snowball is winning over the crowd with his passionate speech, Napoleon makes this high-pitched whimper.
And then what happens?
And 9 enormous dogs wearing brass-studded collars bound into the barn. They go straight for Snowball. He just manages to escape through a hedge as they snap at his tail. And he's never seen on the farm again.
And these were the puppies he took away from their mothers earlier in the book?
Yes. He said he was making himself responsible for their education. What he was really doing was raising them in isolation to be his private army, his secret police, his KGB. From this moment on, there are no more debates. There are no more votes. Napoleon, flanked by his dogs, announces that all decisions will be made by a committee of pigs presided over by himself.
And the other animals are terrified.
They are. They're terrified into silence. And Squealer immediately goes around to explain the new arrangement. He tells them that Snowball was a traitor, a criminal. He starts rewriting history.
This is what you call revisionist history, right?
Yeah. Exactly. He says Snowball was actually working for the humans the whole time, that he was trying to get them defeated at the Battle of the Cowshed.
Which isn't true at all. Snowball fought bravely in that battle. He was wounded.
But Squealer keeps repeating the lie. He adds details. He says they have found secret documents. And because the animals are afraid of the dogs, and because Squealer is so persuasive, they start to believe it. Or at least they pretend to. They start to doubt their own memories.
This is so dark.
Oh.
And it leads us to, I think, the most tragic part of the book. The ultimate betrayal. The betrayal of Boxer.
This is the climax of the tragedy. It's hard to read this part without getting emotional, even after all these years.
So, Boxer has been working himself to death. He's building the windmill, which gets destroyed and has to be rebuilt. He's old, he's tired, his lung is collapsed. And one day, while working, he falls down and can't get up.
The pigs, especially Squealer, pretend to be very concerned. Squealer says, "Don't worry, Comrade Boxer. Comrade Napoleon has already made arrangements to send you to the best hospital in Willingdon. They will cure you there."
And the animals are so relieved. They admire Boxer so much. They think he's finally going to get the rest and care he deserves. A van comes to take him away.
But Benjamin, the cynical donkey, who can read but has never used his ability for good, suddenly breaks his silence. He comes galloping towards the other animals, braying at the top of his lungs. He's in a panic. He tells them to read the side of the van.
He doesn't say hospital.
No, it says, "Alfred Simmons, horse slaughter and glue boiler, Willingdon, dealer in hides and bone meal."
Oh my God. They're sending him to the knacker to be killed and turned into glue and dog food.
The animals scream in horror. They run after the van. Clover shouts, "Boxer, get out quickly. They're taking you to your death." You can hear Boxer inside, kicking at the walls of the van, but he's too old and weak. The van drives away, and Boxer is never seen again.
It is just devastating. But what happens next is somehow even worse. Squealer comes back.
Of course he does. 3 days later, he explains it all away. He says, "Oh, it was a terrible, foolish rumor. The van had been bought by the veterinary surgeon from the knacker, but he hadn't had time to paint over the old name yet."
And he claims Boxer died peacefully in the hospital.
Yes, praising Napoleon with his last breath. He even invents Boxer's last words. "Forward, comrades. Forward in the name of the rebellion. Long live Animal Farm. Long live Comrade Napoleon. Napoleon is always right."
That is just pure evil.
It is. It is the ultimate betrayal. Boxer gave his entire life, his strength, his loyalty, his very body to the revolution, and when he was no longer useful as a worker, Napoleon sold him for profit.
And what did the pigs do with the money they got for selling their most loyal follower?
They bought a crate of whiskey. That night, the animals hear loud singing and a violent quarrel coming from the farmhouse. The pigs had a party.
This is a critical thinking moment for all of us listening. This isn't just about pigs and horses. This is about exploitation.
Yes. It forces you to ask the question, how do systems companies, governments, any organization treat the people who do the actual work? When a worker is too old or too sick to be productive, are they cared for? Or are they discarded?
It reminds me of those workplace situations where companies talk about being a family, but the moment profits dip, they lay people off with an email and no second thought.
Exactly. It connects to this idea of commodification, of treating people like products, like resources to be used up. Boxer was just a tool to Napoleon. When the tool broke, he sold it for scrap metal.
So, Boxer is gone. The spirit of the farm is broken. Years pass. The farm gets richer, but the animals, except for the pigs and dogs, get poorer and hungrier. And then comes the final shocking transformation.
The pigs learn to walk on 2 legs.
This is the ultimate horror for the animals, isn't it? The breaking of the first and most sacred rule. They look out into the yard one day and see a line of pigs, led by squealers, marching on their hind legs. And Napoleon is there, carrying a whip in his trotter.
And the sheep, who used to chant, 4 legs good, 2 legs bad, have been taken away for a week and retrained. As the pigs march, the sheep start bleating a new song.
4 legs good, 2 legs better.
Notice the grammar here. This is important for English learners. We're using the comparative form, good, better, best. Squealer has taken the core concept of good and twisted it. Now, being like a human walking on two legs is not just acceptable, it's better.
And the 7 commandments on the wall.
Gone. Benjamin and Clover go to look at the barn, and the wall has been whitewashed. All 7 commandments are gone. There is only one single sentence left.
All animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others.
This is one of the most famous, most quoted sentences in all of English literature, and it is logically absurd. It's a paradox. You cannot be more equal. Equality is a binary state. Either you are equal or you aren't.
But it makes perfect political sense for what the pigs have done. It means we will use the language of equality to control you, but in reality, we are your masters.
Precisely. It is the definition of hypocrisy, written in giant letters for all to see.
The book ends with a very strange dinner party. The pigs invite the neighboring human farmers over. They're drinking, playing cards, laughing, making speeches.
And the other, ordinary animals, are outside, cold and hungry, looking through the dining room window. And it says they looked from pig to man, and from man to pig, and from pig to man again, but already it was impossible to say which was which.
The revolution has come full circle. The pigs have become the very thing they rebelled against.
And that's the tragedy. They replaced one tyrant, Mr. Jones, with another, much more efficient and brutal tyrant, Napoleon. The name on the gate changed from Manor Farm to Animal Farm and back to Manor Farm again, but the suffering remained the same.
Just quickly, there's a grammar point you wanted to make about that final scene about the word power.
Yes, a very useful one. We talk about power a lot. In English, when we use power in the political sense, meaning control over people, it's an uncountable noun. You don't say Napoleon has many powers. You would say Napoleon has a lot of power, or he has too much power.
Right. It's like water or money or information.
Yeah.
A lot of power. But if you were talking about, say, a superhero.
Then it can be countable. You could say Superman has many powers. Flight, super strength, X-ray vision. But in politics, it's almost always uncountable.
Okay, that's a great tip. We've covered the story from the dream to the absolute nightmare. Now let's move to part 7, critical thinking and real-life connections.
This is where we apply what we've learned. The big question is, why? Why do people or animals follow strong authoritarian leaders like Napoleon?
I think part of it is just raw fear. The dogs. If you speak out, you get attacked.
Fear is a huge factor. You can't discount it. But it's also hope. The animals wanted to believe that life was getting better. To admit that Napoleon was a tyrant would mean admitting that their entire revolution, everything they had sacrificed for, was a failure. And that is a very, very hard thing for anyone to accept.
It's the sunk cost fallacy, isn't it? That idea that we've invested so much time or effort into something we can't turn back now, even if it's failing.
Exactly. And of course, a lack of education plays a massive role. The animals couldn't read well enough to see that the commandments were being changed. They had to rely on Squealer's version of events.
So the big philosophical question, does power always corrupt?
That's the famous quote by Lord Acton. Power tends to corrupt, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. In Animal Farm, we see this play out perfectly. You could argue that even Snowball, who was supposedly good, was starting to enjoy the privileges of being a pig. But Napoleon, who achieved absolute power, became absolutely corrupt. There were no checks, no balances.
Let's connect this to real life for you listening at home. We promised this wouldn't just be about history or literature. Where do we see these characters today?
Well, think about group projects at school or university. Have you ever had a boxer in your group?
Oh, definitely. The one person who does 90% of the work while everyone else just talks about what they're going to do.
And have you ever had a Molly?
The one who disappears right when the hard work starts. Oh, sorry, I have a dentist appointment all week.
Exactly. Or the squealer. The person who does almost no work but presents the project to the teacher and makes it sound like they were the leader who did everything.
We worked very collaboratively on this slide.
Yeah.
When we really means boxer.
Chuckles, right? And in the workplace, we see Napoleon's managers who change the rules to benefit themselves. Maybe they cut bonuses for the staff but give themselves a huge pay raise, explaining it's necessary for the health of the company.
Or social media. I think social media is full of squealers. Influencers who manipulate the truth to sell you something. This magic tea completely changed my life. But really, they're just getting paid thousands of dollars to say that.
That is a perfect example of modern propaganda. It looks like a friendly, personal recommendation, but it's actually a paid, corporate manipulation.
I want to try a speaking practice moment here. For you, the listener, I want you to think about a time you saw a squealer in real life. Someone twisting the truth. I want you to try and finish this sentence out loud. This reminds me of.
Take a moment. You can pause if you need to. This reminds me of when my boss said, or this reminds me of a politician who promised. It's a great way to practice connecting these abstract ideas to your own life.
It really is. Another question to ask yourself is, why is education so important to freedom? I mean, if all the animals could read as well as the pigs, could they have stopped them?
That's a key question. Benjamin could read. He knew what was happening, but he didn't act until it was too late.
So education alone isn't enough. You need education plus action. You need the courage to speak up. That brings us to our review. We have covered a lot of ground today. Let's do a rapid-fire recap of the key vocabulary we introduced.
Ready.
To fight against control.
The state of everyone having the same rights.
Dishonest behavior by those in power.
Being faithful and supportive, sometimes blindly.
Misleading information used to persuade people.
A story with a hidden, deeper meaning.
And our grammar checklist. What are the key things to watch out for from today's deep dive?
Number 1, subject-verb agreement. Remember, the animals were, not the animals was.
Comparatives. More equal is a political trick, but grammatically we say he is stronger than the others. And number 3, remember that power, in a political sense, is usually an uncountable noun.
Excellent. Now, before we go, we need a final provocative thought. The book ends so sadly, it's genuinely depressing. Why did Orwell write it if the message is so bleak?
He wrote it as a warning. That's the key. He didn't write it to say there is no hope or all revolutions fail. He wrote it to wake us up. He wants us to be the opposite of the animals on the farm. He wants us to question what we are told. He wants us to check the facts for ourselves. He wants us to notice when the commandments on the wall are being secretly changed.
So he wants us to be smart like Benjamin, but active. Unlike Benjamin, who waited too long.
Exactly. Knowledge without action is useless. That is the final, powerful lesson of Animal Farm.
So, listeners, here is our call to action for you. Which character are you? Are you the hardworking boxer trusting blindly in your leaders? Are you the skeptical Benjamin rolling your eyes at everything but doing nothing to change it? Or maybe just a little bit. Are you the leader? Napoleon, enjoying the power you have?
A difficult question to answer, honestly.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into Animal Farm. It's been a real pleasure exploring this classic with you.
Thank you. Keep reading, keep thinking, and most importantly, keep questioning.
This has been Hello English. Don't forget to check out the other videos on our channel to keep improving your English and, just as importantly, your critical thinking skills. We'll see you in the next deep dive.